Hey guys, Gina here. So, welcome back to another week of Chasing Your Sunset. It's been a week. It's always a week, isn't it? Don't we just have way too much to do constantly, like all the time? Yeah. Which is why I developed this channel. Because I really feel like we can reclaim our lives and live intentionally, a more simple, intentional, happy, stress-free or stress-less life, maybe. And I talk about whole food, plant-based diet, and I talk about momming sometimes because I do have a very precocious toddler. And I just talk about life in general because you know what? There's not really just one aspect of life, is there? It's kind of all of it combined into this crazy mixture casserole thing. So today I'm going to talk about bright line eating. And it's written by Susan Pierce Thompson, PhD. And it says on the top, the science of living happy, thin, and free. Now, this book was actually brought to my attention, not because I was looking for a weight loss book per se, but I was looking for a book on food addictions. And that's kind of what this book is about. But it does talk about how to lose weight and keep it off and maintain a very healthy lifestyle. But one of the things that I thought was very interesting in this, and I am going to link this book below so that way you can get it. I'm going to link the Kindle version because this book does not have any recipes in it. And so it would be fine reading it on Kindle. And since I'm all about also kind of minimizing your spaces and not having clutter, I think Kindle's a good version for it. But it also comes in hardback. It comes in paperback. You can get it in Audible, which Audible is kind of cool if you want somebody to read it to you. Which it wouldn't be me reading it to you, but I don't know who they have set up for that. But anyway, so basically the gist of the book is that you understand where your lines are and you draw these lines, which are like boundaries that you create. You can create your own boundaries. Now, she gives a lot of really good guidelines of where she suggests the boundaries to be created. But it talks mostly about food addiction. And what I found interesting in there is there's different levels of food addiction. You know, you can be highly susceptible or lowly susceptible. Lowly susceptible? I don't know. Anyway, I have a highly susceptible food addiction issue. And it's interesting because even if it doesn't create an overweight aspect of me, you know, it might be responsible for the extra 20 pounds you can't get rid of or the extra 10 or whatever. But I find that it creates food cravings for me. And so, like, if I had, okay, now I don't eat sugar because it gives me migraines. And so then after I got rid of sugar, the migraines went away, I started feeling better. And then I started reading all this stuff about how sugar was bad for the body. And so I maintained that, no sugar. But I do eat date syrup. I used to eat maple syrup. I can't find it unadulterated anymore, so I don't want to mess with it. I do eat fruits, and, you know, so I'll eat that kind of sugar, but I don't eat table sugar. And in what I'm talking about with sugar is actually the added table sugar. So caffeine is another thing that might actually be like an addiction for some people. And so you start in your morning and you got to have your cup of coffee or you have your tea or whatever. And then mid-afternoon you get the slump and you got to have the pick-me-up. And then maybe later in the afternoon you get the other slump, you got to have another pick-me-up. And so by the end of the day, on average, the American population probably drinks about 3 to 4 cups of coffee a day. And it's not the actual coffee that's the addiction, it's the caffeine. Well, sugar, flour, salt, and even oil can create these same responses in the body. And so you start to crave them. So if you've ever had something and then you start craving it, it's like you give in one day and you have this decadent piece of whatever, and then the next day you're like, around the same time, you're like, oh, wouldn't that be good? I just want that again. Or, ooh, wouldn't that be good? I mean, how many of us have craved French fries or chips? And they're not necessarily sweet, but it does have this salty. And I've heard some people say, oh, it's because of the texture and it's the hand to mouth aspect. I don't have that problem with grapes. So, but what I liked about this book is she actually does talk about how to overcome them. And that's by using her bright lines, which are her boundaries. And so it's a very interesting book in that sense. Now, a lot of the diet information or the weight loss information is going to be pretty basic, but I did still get value out of the book, and I did enjoy it for that purpose. And she does talk about the psychology of how it affects your brain, and there's also different testimonies in here that talk about how they went through it. And then she actually gives you some action plans. So it's actually a nice little book. And I got to thinking that when we're coming into the holidays can be scary. And one of the quotes that I liked about this is like Thanksgiving can be terrifying for people with food addictions. Even if you're not really thinking you have a food addiction. But she says Thanksgiving is just another Thursday. Yeah. So this might be a really good book for you to give to a friend or family member that's suffering from food addictions. It also might be something that you can benefit from if you find that you're constantly having food cravings. It also, for those who are battling that last 10 or 15 pounds and they just can't figure out why, sometimes it's because of what we're eating. Sometimes it can be more of a medical issue. You do have to, be smart about it. But it's a really great book, and I really recommend, Bright Line Eating by Dr. Susan Pierce Thompson. And she also has like a club that you can join. There's also a cookbook that she has available. I don't have the cookbook. I've not been a member of the club, so I can't really speak of those things. But I do know that this week on Good Morning America, there was a segment about how Americans are eating too much sodium and how sodium is added to pretty much every food out there. And it is, according to this segment, was responsible for hypertension or diabetes and all kinds of, they were throwing it out there for everything. And, one of the things that I follow with the whole food, plant-based, no oil, no salt, no sugar is the no salt. Now, I've also talked about how I do have miso, or I do have some Bragg's in some of my dishes, but I don't add table salt. And it did take a while to adjust my taste to that. It wasn't something that I could do just right away. And so it's one of those things that, and she even mentions in this book how if you're trying to get rid of sugar or you're trying to get rid of salt, you need to give yourself a couple of weeks, because that couple of weeks is going to be hard. And you're going to have a plan, and you're going to have an idea of what to do whenever those cravings do hit you. But in this segment that I heard, it was just talking about how the FDA was recommending that Americans cut down on their salt and sodium, and how processed food is chock full of salt and sodium. So it kind of brings you back to the whole single food ingredient list. So as you're planning your Thanksgiving meals and your holiday gatherings this year, think about some ways that you can reduce your sodium, go with a few more single food ingredient foods, and still have lots of flavor. Spices are fine. You can have all kinds of basil and oregano and, chili powder and cumin, and all that stuff is fine. But it would make your diet easier if you are struggling with some weight, or you are struggling with a health issue, or you just realize that you're tired of having the cravings and having food control you versus you just eating to actually just basically live instead of living to eat. So, but I totally would recommend picking up this book, going to your library. That's another way you could get it, is go to your library and check it out. Bright Line Eating by Susan Pierce Thompson. And it's got a lot of great information on how you can take control of your eating habits and help gain control of your health so that you can go chase your sunset and have the best life possible for you. So I hope you have a wonderful week. I will see you next week. Go chase your sunset. Have a wonderful time. All right. Bye.